session today. So today our topic is one of our favorites. We will talk about co-creating smart and green neighborhoods, blocks and spaces. And today is also the last day we are in our Kalasatama Urban Lab space. We have a small audience live here, but most of you are online. Hope you enjoy the day. In the program, we have three interesting blocks. So first, we dive into what Helsinki Innovation Districts is all about, and also talk about how to retrofit smart city. Then we'll go into sharing economy, and today our program is actually very Nordic, and this is why we host this in English. So we will have inspiration from Sweden on the topic, and also you hear what is happening here in Finland. And in the last block, we are looking also into the collaboration we've been doing with the other Nordic cities. And hear a bit more about experimentation and also what we've been learning from collaboration. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Mä voin pitää sen tässä. Kiitos. Yeah, some technical problems, but that's how mornings are often started. Hope you have at least some coffee with you and are able to enjoy the program today. But to start with, I will introduce a very special person, Maija Bergström, from Virium Helsinki, who's been the project manager for Helsinki Innovation District, to welcome us all and get us into the track. Welcome, Maija.
Thank you, Kaisa. So, once more, welcome to our event, Co-Creating Smart and Green Neighborhoods, Blocks and Spaces. As Kaisa already mentioned, this is our last event that will be broadcasted here from Kalasatama Urban Lab, our living lab space here in Kalasatama, as our focus is already shifting a little bit, or not just a little bit, but a lot, to other areas in Helsinki. Kalasatama has served Virium Helsinki as a living lab and innovation platform since 2013, followed then by Jätkäsaari that focuses on smart mobility. So here you can see a little bit of our innovation districts that we have been working with. Both Kalasatama and Jätkäsaari are kind of like brand new and developing areas built on top of old harbor areas. 1.5 years ago, we started expanding our activities to older and more suburban areas as well, so-called regeneration areas, such as Malminkartano, Kannelmäki, Malmi, Mellunkylä, and then also Pasila, which kind of combines really nicely new developments and older areas as well. So, kind of bringing innovation to these places means that both kind of old and new are being combined, these areas being retrofitted with smart solutions. It also brings us a little bit of new challenges that we need to take into account, so we have already learned a lot on how to kind of integrate these new solutions and innovation to older infrastructure that is in need of renewal. But it also means that we have wider possibilities for scale-up when we succeed, because there are lots of places like these areas around Finland and Europe as well. So it's a great place for us to test new solutions. Helsinki Innovation District also works as a kind of an umbrella project for us not to develop only new ideas, but also prepare and link new projects to these places so that we can kind of draw from our earlier experiences and offer networks and the knowledge that we have about these areas. So, for example, today we will hear more about a few projects already linked to these places, such as circular green blocks, operating, for example, in Malminkartano, and then healthy livable neighborhoods that has also kind of links to Malmi. So this is also a great way for us to bring in new partners and themes to these areas. We know that we have friends online from several organizations, so let me take this opportunity also to remind that we are always open for further discussions about how we can collaborate with you. So please get in touch with us. My own journey with this project is coming to an end for a while, as today is my last day before going for parental leave. But Kaisa will continue as a project manager, so there are also other colleagues that you can get in touch, so the work will be carried on with our great team. So, thank you and welcome to this event, and I hope that you will have an insightful Friday morning, both online, maybe on your home sofa, and here at Kalasatama Urban Lab. Thank you.
Thank you, Maija. And we can now dive in a bit more into Helsinki. So I'm inviting Kerkko Vanhanen, our program manager, to host the next block with Elina Estelä.
Thank you, Kaisa, and thank you, Maija, and especially very good morning to everyone. It's great to see you here live in sunny Helsinki, but also right there through the virtual connection. So I will have a short chat session with Elina Eskelä. Elina is working as a senior planning officer in the city executive office, and she has been responsible and diving deeper in the suburban regeneration, and we'll discuss about that, how actually we can transform the city into the and make it to serve better the needs of people and companies for the future decades. We'll go deeper probably in the chat, but I have to underline that, as you see in the map, most of the land in Helsinki is already built. And we have had plenty of projects focused on the brand new districts of the city of Helsinki, and how to get more impact. We need to find solutions that can be scaled in the existing neighborhoods and the districts. So what actually the suburban regeneration is about, I will let Elina explain, and then we will continue. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Kerkko, and thank you for the invitation, and good morning to you all. So my name is Elina Eskelä, and I work with housing policy and also now with the strategic planning of the suburban regeneration. Helsinki has a really long history of social mixing and also taking care of different areas and keeping them as attractive as possible. So we feel that it shouldn't matter where you live in the city regarding the opportunities and possibilities that you have for life and for example, for different recreational possibilities. So this is why, although we have a long history, we need to step up our game, and we have launched suburban regeneration projects that you can see on the map. There are 4 of them: Malminkartano Kannelmäki, Malmi, Mellunkylä, and then Merirastila area. And you might wonder why these areas. So Helsinki monitors the neighborhood development quite closely, and one factor that we use is the socioeconomic index. And as you see from the map, the situation is quite different in various areas in Helsinki. So those areas that are orange or red on the map are, if you look at the socioeconomic index, they are lower than the average of the city. And it tells us that we need to take special focus on these areas and give them special attention. One other aspect that you can look is the locations or the neighborhoods that have a lot of immigrant background people. So we see, especially if you look at the share of the children with a mother tongue, with a foreign mother tongue, you can see that the situation is quite different in different parts of the city. And as the city, we need to take care that that the situations are not, going to two different ways in different parts of the city. We also have really good qualities in these suburban neighborhoods that we aim to develop. So, for example, they have a really excellent location and good public transportation links. So they are all located by train and metro lines. We have upcoming light rail lines coming to different or to many places. We also have some pushing effect from our neighboring municipality of Vantaa that is strongly also developing their neighborhoods. In Malmi's case, we have an upcoming area in the former Malmi airfield, and we need to make sure that also the older Malmi area gets into the development in the larger picture. And in the case of Mellunkylä, there is also one light rail coming from Vantaa that is going to connect this area to the airport, which is quite significant. All right, so how are we going to do this? We have luckily one example from Helsinki, from Mulipura, where over 20 years ago, quite large development project started. And during these over 2 decades, there has been over 30% more dwellings built into this area. And what is significant is that the tenures have balanced the older structure. So this is one example that we are going to take along with us. A lot of investments were made to this area by the city and also by companies. And we see that the area is now more attractive than it used to be. And also that the socioeconomic composition of the residents is quite different. So the education and income levels in this area have risen. And also we see that there is more demand on the older dwellings in that area as well. So the purpose of suburban regeneration projects is to improve the comfort and appeal of these areas comprehensively, and also facilitate high quality infill construction. So this is, so we aim to develop these areas in a really comprehensive scale. And we have divided our goals or actions into 4 categories. First is the vitality, and it means the structural qualities of these areas. So for example, the composition of the housing stock, so the tenures, need to be balanced. as in our general housing policy and also in our yearly housing production, we need to ensure that we have different housing options for diverse needs of the residents. So we have to have social housing, we need to have some intermediate tenures, such as rights of occupancy, and also rental dwellings. At the moment, these areas have mostly too much rental apartments, so we need to take care that we get more owner-occupied and also right of occupancy housing there. And also these smart city developments that we are making together with Virium Helsinki, I think they are really important part of growing this vitality of the areas. The other category is urban environment. So this means how the city works in these neighborhoods, how the urban environment works, like how are the pedestrian roads and how do you get by from the station? Does it feel safe? How does it look? Is the environment clean? Is it attractive? So these are the things that are considered also in these suburban regeneration projects. The third category is services, and as a city we offer and produce a lot of services in these areas, such as schools, culture, leisure services, sports facilities, etc. So we need to make sure that the services are catering for the needs of the residents and also that they are so attractive that they invite people from other neighborhoods as well to visit these areas. The fourth category is commitment. So it means that as a city we are a huge organization. We have almost 40,000 people working for the city of Helsinki. So we need to make sure that everyone in this organization is committed to focus on these areas, to make sure that enough resources are reserved for these areas. And also, the commitment means that we as a city need to make sure that we work together with the residents, with the actors in these areas, because the residents are those who know what they need in the areas. We have a lot of work to do. We cannot do it as one actor, so we need to have cooperation, such as this project with Virium Helsinki. We have made sure that suburban regeneration is part of our housing policy and it's also a part of our city strategy. So it is really an important priority for the city. These projects will be led and monitored from the City Executive Office, and the time scale is really long, so we know that building new dwellings is quite slow. So our time scale is up to 2035, but of course we need to make quicker actions as well, and we have been doing them already. So there's a lot of work to be done. And here are the key persons working with the suburban regeneration areas. Of course, we have a lot more people, but here are some of the persons that you can get into contact if you are interested in a certain area or the project as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Elina. And I propose, well, I suppose we will not see the map anymore, so let's just go without the pictures. That was in a nutshell what the suburban regeneration is about. And in Forum Virium Helsinki and together with the city of Helsinki, we have had this quite kind of famous smart Kalasatama project that was in this district in completely new neighborhood, old harbor transformed into housing and offices. And you were one of the people who said that the next project should focus on these suburban districts. Why?
Because I feel that, of course, everyone deserves a smart city, but especially the residents in these areas, I think they are the ones that could really have some something extra added to their daily lives through these innovations that come from these projects. So I think that the smart city projects should be used as a tool to ensure the support and also the focus on people who might be socioeconomically disadvantaged. Or
so kind of raise the overall awareness of what modern urban living could offer to people, no matter where they live. As you showed in the presentation, that the postal code should not matter.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's good approach. You had one slide about Mulipura District, and I know that has been a huge transformation, a completely new university for applied sciences, and that has been one of the kind of landmarks there. We do not have such universities in all of those districts. How do you see the future? What else could be kind of such an attractive place in the center of the districts that would kind of raise the value of the whole district to the new level?
Well, of course, it's unfortunate that we cannot have those campuses in every of these suburban neighborhoods. But I think with our suburban regeneration areas, they are all unique. So we need to make sure that we take the strengths that are already in these areas and use them as a positive force. So at this point, I cannot promise like what are the main attractors in those areas, but I know that we as a city are working especially together with the cultural and leisure services, because like in Mulipura, the sports facilities have been really interesting for people all over the Helsinki. So
and that's the value of the city of Helsinki in general, that people have the abilities to do sports and enjoy the green environment everywhere where they live.
Yes.
That's definitely so. About those new 4 areas we have, we now have this new project as well, Smart City Helsinki Innovation Districts, and we have, for example, run some agile piloting rounds. How do you see what's kind of the positive result what the city of Helsinki can gain from such agile piloting rounds? We have focused in smart lighting and sensors in the urban environment, for example.
Well, of course, the general aspect of helping businesses to grow and to test their product, that's important for the city, of course. But then in a more general matter, of course, if there are new new products developed and new insights gained, then of course the issues of lighting and how to create a safe and appealing environment, they are questions that are that consider all of the neighborhoods. So of course, when something really good is coming up from these projects, we can use it elsewhere as well. So.
Yes, and having a live kind of networking all the time, having the connection what we have with you, with the audience. We have in the audience also some people from the companies with whom we have been working with in the agile piloting rounds, and that's really positive. It's not only the experience for the city, not only the experience for the companies, but also the real end users,
Yes.
the citizens. You mentioned that it's really important in even in your longer scale regeneration project to have the close cooperation with the residents. How are you happy with the tools you have, how to connect people and how to interact with them, or is there something you are looking for?
Well, of course, Helsinki has a wide variety of tools for to engage with residents and to ensure participation. But as we have a lot of services that we are developing and so on, so we need to get better with that as well. And one issue has been in the past years exactly how to open up the city's spaces to the residents. So the same themes that you have had in Kalasatama, it's not solved yet. So of course, like, and as you said, a lot of Helsinki is built already. So we need to still develop the how can the city work in these already existing areas and to open up the city spaces to the residents, for example.
Yes.
So that's one aspect. But yes, we have a lot of work with that area.
Yeah, you are right. How to kind of get best out of the existing infrastructure we already have. That's definitely one of the key things to have smart and resource-wise usage of the spaces we build and invest in the cities.
Yes.
That's one of the topics we are concentrating also in this Helsinki Innovation Districts project, and hopefully in some level the project and Forum Virium Helsinki can support the city to bring more business, for example, to the district of Malminkartano and Kannelmäki, where we now at the moment find a lot of empty spaces which could be transformed into something new. But how to do that, how to use and utilize the latest technology, is there something that we could bring from other technical domains so that finally we can find that those now empty spaces are full of life again?
Yes.
That's part of the regeneration, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yes. If I'm looking at the map and older districts, they are grown districts, they already have older trees and more green. And today we also hear about, and the one of the kind of headlines is green and livable neighborhoods. What I have personally learned is that it's not only aesthetical thing. Green infrastructure could also have some the reason to have that in built and dense kind of stone city is also to control the microclimates. And that's what we are also focusing. Maija mentioned that we will have some kind of separate independent projects under the umbrella of Helsinki Innovation District project. How is it that in from your professional point of view, what are the main challenges, on the other hand, what you try to change in those districts, and on the other hand, what you try to kind of save because they are so valuable?
Well, I think it's probably the classic problem of infill building.
Yes.
Anyway, because it's not just these areas, but everything. So or everywhere in Helsinki, because now we build more than 7,000 dwellings per year, and around half of them are built in the suburban neighborhoods, so the existing neighborhoods. So, of course, it's always or often residents feel that, or they are surprised that, okay, something is built here, and if it happens to be a vacant plot that has been vacant for decades maybe, and there are trees growing or something green, then it's often a shock. And
that's quite understandable.
Yes, so we need to be really careful where we build and how we build, and to make responsible solutions. Because of course we also it is sensible to build where the infrastructure is already built.
Yes.
So and where there are good public transportation links, so along the railways and so on.
So to build there where already are buildings, but
yes.
not too much to
yes.
maintain the values of the green
yes.
areas as well.
So it's always a balancing
yeah.
act, and also in these neighborhoods, one issue is that the services are declining because the population
yes.
is declining, so the amount of residents, and this infill building also helps to keep the services there.
Yes.
But it's sometimes it's like a catch-22.
So that's actually a good point. Smart city development, it's not only we do not and we can't have only technological approach. There are values and political issues as well, and when we try to kind of fit and retrofit the good examples from more laboratory conditions to the existing neighborhoods, it does take time, and sometimes the scaling impact isn't probably as big as it was predicted.
Yes.
But that's kind of the soul of smart city development. We need to work closely with all stakeholders. We need to have the right tools to work with them, and that way, hopefully, we are building, as you said, 2035 was your
yes.
your one of the target years. So probably on that day, we'll have way more modern and still very kind of livable, nice neighborhoods around the city of Helsinki.
Yes.
Utilizing and enjoying the good experience from Smart Kalasatama, widening it to the
Yes.
city level. Elina, I want to thank you for the chat. I want to thank the audience. It's now time to go forward, and Kaisa, I will let you guide us further.
Yeah, thanks both. I would first like to hear if there are, Ruska, some questions maybe from online or from our audience here. If not, I have a question for Elina. What would be your favorite smart you would like to see in the Helsinki Innovation Districts happening?
Wow, that's a really tough question. Well, maybe it links to the sharing of the spaces, because I know that's a real issue that we need to tackle here at the city. But as Kerkko has mentioned, all these examples, what you are doing already, I think the best in this project, this Innovation District project, is that I think the cooperation with the city and Forum Virium Helsinki, it's really organic somehow in this project. So I think we found us like the timing was just perfect, because we as a city need all the help that we can get with these suburban regeneration projects. And then, of course, because you are excited to test new things and to bring that development further, it was just the perfect match. So I think we will have many good ideas and pilots in this project.
That's a good point to underline also to the international audience. So as you said, the timing is right now. So we are very open for good international cooperation as well. So hopefully, as you said, please contact us.
Yeah, great. But thank you for this session. I think it was good also to let the international audience hear what is happening from the city of Helsinki perspective. So thanks for coming this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will be continuing with one of the topics which is very important for Helsinki Innovation Districts. And sharing economy in cities is something we've been looking into in Smart Kalasatama during our project for many years already. And it's still an important topic when moving to the older districts in Finland. But we are also looking for inspiration and learnings from elsewhere. And that's why we have invited Charlie Gullström from Sweco, who's been working with the sharing cities in Sweden, to give us some experiences from the neighbor. Welcome, Charlie. We're super excited to have you here today.
Moi, and thank you. Good morning, everyone from Stockholm. Can you hear me and see me all right?
Yes, we hear and see you all right.
All right, that's great. So yes, I'm an architect and with a long background as a researcher in smart sustainable cities, and more recently circular economy is my great interest. And I left academia for Sweco about a year ago because I really want to make sure that architects, planners, sustainability advisors who are working in business can also contribute to climate transition in cities. So it's very exciting. Sweco has also offices in Helsinki and all over Europe, and we're about 18,000 consultants. So it's a lot of effort that can contribute to this important area. And you're already on the topic this morning, because I think what we're talking about here is the fact that we need to consider cities as very important nodes where change can take place. But how can we ensure citizen-driven climate transition is taking place? And you were talking already a lot about how to engage the residents. And I think that's why I want to share with you today a project called Sharing Cities Sweden. But it does also entail all these other topics that we know are around us now. Goals such as climate neutral cities 2030 that also Helsinki is engaged in. So I will share experiences from this program and some other projects I'm working on more recently, because this was a program over 4 years, and it closed last year, and it's funded by Viable Cities, which is a big Swedish body promoting climate transition in cities. And the program was built such as 4 test beds developed in 4 cities to try to see how the sharing economy could speed up climate transition. So it's basically putting the sharing economy side by side to the climate goals that these cities were already having. So quite a large program with a lot of funding, a lot of partners coming in, and I myself was in charge of one of these test beds, so I'll talk mostly about that today. But of course, these test beds, just like you are doing in Kalasatama and in other areas in Helsinki, it's very often that you link the climate goals, the climate projects to transition to city development areas. So most of these test beds were focusing on urban development areas, just as the kind that you have in and around Helsinki. But the greater context, and now congratulations also to Finland, because you know, on the left side here, I have this EU missions, the 100 climate neutral cities that the EU has now pushed forward. And what's interesting for us in Sweden is that this is quite similar to the initiative that Viable Cities as a strategic innovation program took around 2017, and now has 23 Swedish cities engaged towards the same goal. So it's very sort of aligned. The effort to work with cities or urban environments and towns is, of course, because that's where you have people living. You can engage private businesses, but you can also engage the civil society. And I think this is the important thing, that the bottom-up sort of citizen engagement is needed. Then we need digitalization to speed up. And we also need top-down mayors signing climate city contracts. So I think we're now part of a very important change in Europe, where the funding will go to such stakeholder interactions in urban areas. And that's really an introduction to the program Sharing Cities Sweden, which, as I said, was sort of boosted by Viable Cities and several Swedish funding bodies. And in my test bed, we worked together with a citizen initiative called Hammarby Sjöstad 2.0, and the area as such was in Hammarby Sjöstad, which you know was an eco district, really the kind of innovation district as you have here in Helsinki, but a few years earlier, where the city of Stockholm really had to create another kind of organization to be able to build something which was not just business as usual. So after Hammarby Sjöstad, you know, in Stockholm, we have the more recent Royal Seaport area, which took the learnings from this innovation district and so on. So I thought it was very interesting to study an area where people have actually been living now for 15, 20 years, and not sort of take a new development area, to try to see whether those conditions that were planned as an eco district, would it make it easier to sort of work with developing a sharing culture. I'm really sorry, I have to take my phone off. Bad mistake, sorry about that. So, because in Hammarby Sjöstad, when it was designed and planned, there were a lot of, for example, common areas, common public spaces, shared facilities in the buildings, and in general, a lot of green areas close to the water, etc. So it's an important question whether you can plan for this kind of sharing culture, or if you cannot. Was the social, economic, and demographic structure such that perhaps sharing would be easier here than in other neighborhoods, or what were those possibilities? So that's a little bit of an introduction to how we were trying to understand the mechanisms of sharing by working together with this association, a citizen initiative, Hammarby Sjöstad 2.0, where they had formed like an association between about 30 housing associations. So it was a network of learning that was already existing, which was quite powerful. So, but besides that, we had a lot of different partners to the project, and together with these citizens, we formulated like a local climate goal. We said that Hammarby Sjöstad should be a climate neutral city district by 2030. And this is a little bit unusual, because a climate goal, you can make a national one or you can make it for the city. But we wanted to really work from the bottom up here. So the questions then were of the kind that, for example, in some of these blocks, the city blocks, there were already a lot of common spaces, like I was saying. In this one that we see on the picture, the architect already 20 years ago planned for urban farming. So my research question was really, will this make it very easy then for this block to share much more than other blocks? And I learned quite a lot about this, because it isn't enough to just provide the spaces. Maybe it's obvious, but there are a lot of other mechanisms involved. So they represent some kind of obstacles then for the sharing culture to develop. And what I see in general in Sweden and in the Nordic countries is, of course, that we are very used to moving into very well-planned residential areas, and we have great trust into our governments, the local governments. So we become quite passive as residents. We don't really need to be active and to you know, if there is a problem with the water supply, or if the air is polluted, we know how to approach those who are responsible. In Southern Europe, climate transition is now very different, because there is less trust in the government, and this means that citizens are more likely to take things into their own hands. I think this is it's an important notion to have about climate change and how to engage residents. You need to understand the values and find really the possibilities where they can engage. It's not obvious. What we did is that we developed a series of workshops, co-creation workshops with families. So we targeted the young people. For example, here, this girl is in a workshop to build her own air quality sensor. So she goes home and she can put this on her balcony in the block where she lives. And then the project sort of developed to see, how can we represent this? Can we work in some kind of digital twin to create a local platform where the neighbors feel that they can start trusting each other? Because my surveys and my interviews show that people don't knock on each other's door to borrow sugar any longer. It's not happening in a typical Swedish, well-designed area. It's of course happening in other more socioeconomic challenging areas where sharing is something that is part of everyday life. But it's like in these kinds of neighborhoods, you need to maybe work a little bit with some other initiatives, and the digital tools, I think, are very important therefore. So we had a whole series of topics that we thought would engage citizens, like food waste, or what about plastic? How can we get rid of plastic? And we really went into blocks. So we selected some blocks, and we focused on the families and their everyday life, and trying to engage them in scenario building and in finding out what could be interesting for them. This topic of urban farming became we were very interested in this ourselves, and the logic of saying that you have all these parking garages under your buildings here, because 20 years ago that was obvious, you needed parking garages. How can we transform that into hydroponic farming, and therefore create a sort of local ecosystem, a circular economy, where you would be able to harvest or subscribe to some kind of circular economy system. And this is what we started then developing in terms of a 3D model, a kind of digital twin, which would represent like the air quality data from the balconies, with the example I showed, or availability of charging spaces for electrical cars, because that's one thing that this local group already did, was to make sure that there were a lot of local available charging possibilities. So we developed this, and it was a very innovative form of digital twin, which I am now continued working on in other projects. But I'm jumping from this Sharing City Sweden, and I will take your questions later, because I think this topic, it started with sharing economy, but it's really circular economy that is now developed as a kind of strategy to reach the climate goals in municipalities today. I think it's important to see that circular economy doesn't need its own goals or anything, but it's an important strategy because it engages people in their local. And this local is, of course, what we also know from the 15-minute city concept that, for example, Paris picked up on, and where everything should be within reach. If things are within reach, it also means that you will know people better. You will know your neighbors, and that is an important part of trust. But it also means that you can distribute resources in a different way, because the city is otherwise so anonymous that there is no way for us to become these active residents or citizens. We will prefer to be the passive kind. I'm summarizing in short now. Sweco has made an interesting report every year called Sweden's New Geography. And on the topic of the post-pandemic society, it's very clear a sort of moving out of Stockholm, for example, has negative numbers. And there is a change to wanting to be part of a smaller community. But of course, it also needs to have urban qualities. And I think it's important to see that the urban design or the local city block where you live or where you work is also a tool for health and well-being in broader terms. So it's a lot of different things coming together. But what we can show as well is that, if you really take care of people, you can quantify it in the numbers and you can save lives. Because as a study showed from the city of Gothenburg, when they just saw that there was an increase in cycling to work, and if you calculate based on that figure, if you calculate that, for example, 45%, not even half of the citizens, if they would cycle half an hour to work, then you would gain so many lives and money. So this is, I think, this is where a circular economy starts, by thinking, what will I gain as an individual or as a city district, as a community, if something can change, where my personal contribution matters as much as that of the city. And in the work that I've done, I've looked very much at the Finnish example from Lahti, because I thought it was a brilliant project, an EU project where the municipality created a kind of sustainability budget of virtual euros, so that if you would not take the bus to work or to school, you could use those euros, for example, to pay for the swimming pool and other things like that. And now this is really what circular economy is about, that we're not just using euros, we're also investing our time and our energy. And this was a report that I wrote at the end of the Sharing Cities project last year, involving Älvstranden Utveckling, which is city development part of the city of Gothenburg. And it was very interesting because it forced me to really think of what are the first 7 steps to actually bringing this to the next level. So I'm sharing this with you now, a few things. So what they basically asked us was, what are the other drivers besides commercial drivers and shops? What else can you add to the street level so that we can have lively neighborhoods? And of course, that means that it's something else but commerce. And so the work that I've been doing on stakeholder interaction and collaboration, I took it a step further. We studied what is called BID, or the Business Innovation District. I think some of you will know what this is. We call this BID++, because BID is about real estate partners, public, private companies, collaborating with the municipality for example, to solve some urban problems locally near their buildings. But we need more. So it's an interesting model, but we need more stakeholders. We need the residents to be on board. We need different kinds of stakeholders. We need all stakeholders to be on board, all representing different categories. So this has developed as a kind of a model that I'm presenting now, where we make use of the hidden assets and all the resources, not only energy surplus flows, but also individual capacities. And so this is a beginning of a cooperative and circular business model or activity model to share resources. And in the report, I take some examples, like Time Village is an online platform a few years ago, started in Stockholm, where people share time. You know, if you, for example, are good at speaking Italian, but you want to learn French cooking, then you can submit your skills, and you can join others, and there are like workshops put together between people who either can share something or who want to learn something. So this is, of course, about sharing my time. And there are many initiatives that are worth talking about, but they have not really scaled yet. So it's important to see how can we facilitate this at neighborhood level. This, which is sneakers washing on the South Island in Stockholm, where a father and the son just started a shop where they clean sneakers, shoes. But as you see on the little snapshot from the newspaper, it's almost like a coffee bar as well. So it's a cool place. It's a nice place. It invites you to want to recycle and reuse your shoes. So this kind of caring is so needed. And so what we did is that we designed a sort of fictive block, or we suggested that we were given a little space, a little shared space inside a building. And outside we would use the space to build some kind of structure. That makes use of water coming from sort of the rainwater. And then, of course, can store this and can generate some urban farming, but it also becomes a stage and it announces something. So we call this an eco-terrace. But really, it's connected to a whole agenda of activities that over the years, if we can dream, or if we really work on it, in 2028, the day is full of activities here. Because it is part of a cooperative kind of association that manages the block's resources. And it can be that on the roof, the association has installed solar cell energy and therefore produces more than they can use in this block. And so there's a surplus. And if you can take this to the whole block or city district, of course, this allows for an energy storage, so that not every building needs to have, extra energy. And there are new regulations now that facilitate this, but we have not yet seen the motors of how we can work with this. Because many cities sit with the challenges of, actually this slide is wrongly placed, I'll skip it. Like the Lati example of a local currency, this is a key to allowing the circular and linear economy to work hand in hand. Because of course you should be able to buy a coffee here with kroner or euros, but maybe you have gained something from this sort of way of thinking. You may have contributed something to the association earlier in the week. And your reward, therefore, is that you have some left in your sustainability budget. So in sum, the first 7 steps, and maybe there are 100 steps, it's like a ladder, but it was important to show that there are some first steps so that you know what you need to do. And of course, you need to recruit these stakeholders that want to share resources. There is a waste from one, there is a surplus from another, there is an engagement in the local. So to form this association is very important, and to form a challenge or to define a challenge that you can work with. And then you need to do this inventory of all the assets, waste, skills and resources that you can find around in this, within the system boundary of the block or whatever it is. And you need to start working in scenario building and working towards this goal, and backcasting methodologies are very good. You need to structure the whole economy, and you need a lot of advice, and you need to think of what are the possible forms of investments where you invest in the future of young people, for example. So there are many different models to be sought here. And just now I'm going a little bit speedy here, not to take up all the time today, but the steps then they continue by developing the sort of how the circular economy goes on, and this is a section through the block, because you can imagine that one thing leads to another. I mean, if you have these a surplus of urban green hydroponic food production, maybe there is a little smoothie and a pesto production going on. There also can be a need for new kinds of education, training, ecosystem services that are needed to maintain in our green cities. Who can take care of that kind of education, etc. So we see a lot of activity generating like in a positive spiral from this. Now, very recently, we were invited by the city of Gävle, who is one of these 100 climate neutral cities, and is also one of viable cities in the 2030 mission. So they asked 4 architectural firms to make proposals for development of 6,000 flats in a former industrial estate in Gävle. So it's very similar to challenges you also have in Finland. But what was interesting here is that they asked us, could we make a proposal of a fully circular city district? And I love the courage of the municipality, and we hope that they want to go ahead with this, but this we don't know yet. But I want to share it with you because I feel that we took the ideas that I worked on in the Sharing Cities program a little bit longer. So we used the Barcelona superblock model to sort of organize life. So these associations that I spoke about before, you needed to create some kind of large cooperative association for the whole area, and then for each block where sharing can take place. So this was very important. But how can you even build 6,000 houses at the same time as you have signed this climate city contract? It's very difficult to steer the building, the transports of waste during a building process represents so much negative impact on the environment. So the first thing is, of course, not to take anything down. Basically, we said that 90% of the existing buildings on site and of the asphalt and of the green areas, everything stays. The less you move, the better for circular economy, the better for reaching your climate goals. So this was very important to say that nothing really leaves this neighborhood. We can use old buildings even if they are a little bit ugly. It's better to preserve them and to let them be the base for these kinds of activities that citizens can take charge of. So this is a very important part of the logic to catalyzing circular economy at city district level, that you can't just erase everything and start from zero. You need to actually preserve a lot which is there in your urban planning, because there are very big gains to be made, both in terms of money and for the environment. And we made a calculation of what you can save if you build 10 properties or if you build 100 properties. by reusing, fully reusing, or at least 90% of reuse, you can really save so much money and negative impact on the environment. So this was a rushed run through of a lot of projects, and I hope I can share with you in some kind of discussion now. If I stop sharing.
Yes, absolutely. This was so inspiring. I think many of us here, at least in Kalastama Urban Lab, we had many ideas. And actually now I'm inviting here Kimmo Rönkä, who's our collaborator, a future living specialist, and sharing anything person as well, to reflect and have a dialogue. And also we will see if there's any other questions from the audience. Welcome, Kimmo.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Charlie.
Hi.
Thank you for super inspiring presentation. And I think we all think the same, that in the future there are no other cities than sharing cities. We really have to think the whole city differently. It's stupid to own something that you don't need, but it's so fun to use something that is useful for you. So this is some kind of paradigm change in whole attitude to the city. Owning, like cars, like my sons used to say that owning a car is so last century. It's so stupid to own. Young people, actually 50% people living in the center of Helsinki don't own a car. 50%. So and it's rapidly growing all the time, and it's why to own a car? Anyway, you know these things, but points to the presentation. I think the most important question is that how to speed up climate transition. And you used two answers, using test beds and citizen engagement. And if I say what's the difference, I always say that what's the difference between an experiment and a pilot? Experiments has right to fail, but if we have a pilot, then we do everything to get them not fail. And so what is the difference between an idea and an innovation? You are not responsible for the idea. Ideas are free to share. But an innovation, if you have a new product or service launch on the market, you are responsible for it. So ideas are free to share, but those innovations, we must really help them to scale. First fail and then scale. With the experiments we fail, and then with a pilot we scale. And I would like to say that in normal areas, why we need test beds? Because in normal areas it's all about business as usual, and in test beds it's about innovation as usual. So it's an attitude working with normal areas and these test beds, and it's very important that everybody working there have the same attitude, that it's really we are doing something new and we must proceed, help them to go. But anyway, next, co-creation engagement, it's all about it. And these are very long-lasting projects, and from idea to innovation is a long way. So we need to learn. It's also learning from the inhabitants, it's learning from the companies. So it's the whole test beds, it's like a lifelong school of learning. And that is also an attitude that people should have in the test beds. And also, if I go next topic to 1 minute city or 15-minute city, and it's always, it's not a region. You were talking about local areas, very local. I think the trend in the future is not local, it's very local. And 15-minute cities, I think it's nice, but 1 minute city is more inspiring for my point of view, if I think it, because it's the nearest environment. It's the street just near us, it's the park just near us, it's the block that we are living. And think of the potential that exists in these buildings and these existing areas. And maybe I raised one thing, you talk about these hidden assets in the neighborhood. And you talk about humans, you know, it's not only commercial thing. This is very important when we are doing things with inhabitants and citizens. It's not about commercial things. It's always about services, but also those things that people share without paying anything. And then we talk about human skills, families, tribes, hobby groups, maybe bird watchers, people with their dogs, and what kind of resources have those. And I'm always inspired, very inspired, when people are doing real work with true inhabitants, because you never know what happens there, and it's so inspiring to do. And I always say that there are 3 factors in there: wow, cool, and fun. It must be a wow, that you get inspired, that must be cool, that is nice to use it, and it must be fun. But finally, about your presentation and this circular economy, and my point is that I think that the transition is much more bigger than we can imagine, changing to fossil economy to circular economy. So how to really speed up the transition to circular economy? Somebody says that everything must change. You had these steps, but what do you think, Charlie, is the most important first step? If you have 7, but if you rise 1 step, what should we do first? We all. Thank you for the presentation anyway, once again.
Thank you for your comments. Is there time for me to just share a few reflections?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm thinking the word testbed, of course, could rather be called living lab. That's a discussion we're having often. And there is a problem, of course, of creating too many pilots, or municipalities talk about the graveyard of projects. Because you have, so this is really the issue about scaling. How do you scale? Even if we work with one city district, how does the rest of the city learn from the experiences? But I think it's really important to, and this maybe is the first step, that you need to involve the local actors, but it's the residents, yes, but also other actors at the local scale need to be involved in some kind of activity, which is partly organized by the municipality, but it needs to be, interest from all the stakeholders. And I wanted to say that I have been advising Stockholm in their application for the 100 Climate City contract process, and it was very important to set a different number of geographical areas, just like you've done in Helsinki, which maybe are slightly different, but which provide us a kind of demonstration area. And maybe we need to find new words now, from innovation district to demonstration district, or other words. But by the word demonstration and experimentation, a more inclusive way where all stakeholders are part, and where the city as a whole can look at several areas and lift a good example, so that finally there is a web of experiences in the city and between cities. But scaling is a really difficult thing, because cities don't normally need to help each other. There is no incentive for one municipality to share with another, unless you are part of such a great mission, such as this 100, I think there is real hope in lifting these cities that are examples of and potential role models.
What if today we have city planners? What if we have in the future city scalers?
That's really a good one. Yeah, very interesting job description, I think, as well. Many of us here in the room, I think, are willing to work with that, because otherwise, you know, you start one project again,
Yes.
and you find the enthusiasm just because there is money coming in, you know, or researchers suggesting, let's try this, or industry. So yeah, let's work towards that.
It's also a learning process for us designers and planners. So we have to step one step ahead, closer to companies and closer to inhabitants. And so we are really, maybe if we focus on scaling, then maybe miracle happens, but it goes like, we will go to next step in this development.
Yeah, and you know why your idea is really good, I think, because it forces also a multidisciplinary approach, because you need to work between the different divisions, of course, in the municipality. So planning is usually in one or two divisions of the municipality, whereas the environmental group maybe is working on in another building, you know, and we need to get these to meet. And by talking of the scaling, we will cut through those silos, I think.
Sure.
Thanks a lot. There's one more question for Charlie, I think.
Yes, we have a question on the chat from Emilia Rönkö for Charlie and Kimmo. And it goes, what happens after a successful city pilot? How do you take innovations into actual use in the public sector?
You first.
Sorry, can you say it again?
Okay. So the question is, what happens after a successful city pilot? How do you take innovations into actual use in the public sector?
Yeah, well, this is what we were just talking about. That this is why scaling needs to be addressed as a real problem today. I think you need to lift the good examples that you have in your municipality and really talk about how you can connect this to other stakeholders, because it will stay otherwise as an island of innovation and not be part of the learning.
Yeah.
My point is that we should understand experiments are different than pilots. Experiments are that we fail and scale, meaning that it's sometimes good to fail, because then you know what direction you have to go next step. So it's somehow, my point is that it is a common shared learning process for each of us, and be open and have a good will and strong will to do it.
Thanks, Kimmo. That was also a good kind of introduction for next topics. And Charlie, I really hope we can continue dialogue with you. And I hope you have the chance to listen to Anna-Maria's very short presentation at least. So this has been very inspiring, and you bet we are coming to Sweden to learn more also and have a dialogue. And I mean, this was for me at least more than I could expect. So the very many angles that we are addressing at the moment in Helsinki Innovation Districts were touched, and I think also when we go forward in our program, so we will now go into what we are experimenting at the moment. So I hope that's also interesting for you if you have the chance to be online. Thank you a lot.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I am very often in Helsinki, so I do look forward to meeting you soon.
Super, we'll do that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Still two more questions. If we have time. In the audience. Well, she's gone.
We can't. I'm now inviting Anna-Maria Rossi from Forum Virium Helsinki to tell what we are experimenting at the moment in one of the umbrella projects, Circular Green Blocks.
Thank you, Kaisa. Few slides forward. So thank you guys, and thank you Kimmo and Charlie. It has been very inspiring morning, and I hope to be able to talk to you both later more about these topics. But as Kaisa said, I will now say a few words what we are doing at the moment at Virium Helsinki regarding this team in very practical level. So we have launched this Circular Green Blocks project last fall. And here, in this project, our aim is to bring circular and sharing economy to the block level by collaborating and co-creating very tightly with the housing companies or housing cooperatives. And in the beginning, we first searched for housing companies to collaborate with us, to co-create with us, and also to explore the possibilities of sharing economy. And we were happy to find 4 different pilot locations to work with us. We have 2 rental housing locations, one from Vantaa and one from City of Espoo, and then 2 private housing companies in Helsinki. So we have very different types of housing companies now working with us, and also then we started a bit more thorough research and analysis on what kind of locations we have, or what kind of housing companies we are working with, what kind of thoughts and ideas the residents have regarding sharing and circular economy, or do they have any? Also, that was one point. But also what kind of services they're already using or they would like to use in the future. And so this kind of set also the whole basis for the further and upcoming project activities. And this was also run mainly by our partner Metropolia University of Applied Sciences. And we got very good insights, and then we opened a open call for the companies, and we were looking for new services and technologies to be tested with these housing companies. And so these housing companies act as a living lab or test bed, as Charlie and Kimmo just referred to, that it's a good way to try these new solutions. And finally, we actually got very interesting offers from several companies, but finally 3 pilots or agile pilots were selected, and these will be now brought to the housing companies to be tested. And here are just short mentions what's going to happen next. So we are now launching these pilots during this summer. The first pilot will be focusing on shared electronic bikes. And here the company running this pilot is called Villari Fixa and Loona. It's from Tampere, this company. And here we especially want to see how the housing companies can take this kind of service into use, what kind of models work best for the different types of housing companies. As I said, we have both rental housing companies as well as private working with us, but this pilot will be run together with VAV Group, which is owned by the city of Vantaa, so a rental housing company. But we look very much forward to how it's gonna go, and this is something we hope to be, as Kimmo said, wow, and how did you say, wow and wow fun and wow cool and fun, yeah. And the other 2 pilots will be concentrating on sharing goods and stuff. So we have 2 different companies providing a bit similar solutions, and they will be tested into different type of housing companies, one being a smaller housing company and one a bigger block consisting of 10 different housing companies. So it will be also setting a bit different scenes for both pilots. But both companies will be providing a digital platform and also some type of smart facility for the residents to share and use these goods together. And within these pilots, we look forward to seeing, will this kind of sharing increase the sense of community within the neighborhood and within the housing companies, but also will the residents, how eager they will be to borrow these items, but also how could we encourage the residents to also provide their own stuff and goods and loan or rent them to the neighbors. So we look very much forward to these pilots and how they will go. So as I said, they're now starting. So if you're interested, we will be communicating about them more next fall. And at the same time as we have these sharing economy pilots going on, we also have a few urban farming pilots going in the same locations run by HSY. And so the residents and the housing companies will get a lot of experiences and new services to be tested. Yeah, this was very short presentation, just what's going on at Forum Virium Helsinki regarding these teams. I think we're running a bit behind with the schedule, so I think we can take one question or two if there's time, but if not, we can also go forward.
Is there a question to Anna-Maria from the audience? One question, yes. Welcome. Carl.
Thank you. A short question. Can foreign companies apply for the agile piloting?
Yes, actually can. This piloting round, the companies have been selected for this piloting round, but we will also be opening a new call the next fall. Yeah.
And what theme will that be?
It has not been decided yet, but we will publish it after the summer as well.
But relating to circular green blocks anyway,
yes.
So within the same kind of project.
Yeah, with the same piloting housing companies.
And within the Helsinki Innovation Districts area. So yeah, we'll keep you posted. And thanks for joining us today. We have some friends from the Nordics here as well. Thank you, Anna-Maria.
Thank you.
That was really to the point after Charlie and Kimmo's comments, and really that was all about experimentation. And actually I will continue with that topic, and also kind of referring to Charlie was speaking about how cities do not normally work together so much. Everyone is working on their own. But within the Nordics, so we've had at least the Nordic Smart City Network working together since 2018. And doing things together. Lately, we have Nordic innovation funding for a project called Nordic Healthy Cities, which is kind of our umbrella on the common topics we kind of look into or have been looking into during the past years. And us and some of the other cities have been running a very small piloting program with the title Healthy Liveable Neighborhoods. But that has also been, for us in Forum Virium Helsinki, a way to share the models we do work with on experimentation. So we've been running Agile Piloting Program model, and this time on a different, from a different angle, as we've been working in 3 different labs, in 3 different cities, and also having other cities following us and then learning together with us. So that also kind of makes it possible to share the learnings and maybe scale up learnings or models also wider. And within the Healthy Livable Neighborhoods, so we've been really looking into healthy cities on built environment angle, but also very much from the perspectives of green infrastructure and foodscapes. So like Charlie was mentioning, the urban farming in Sweden, in the blocks, and also Anna-Maria was referring to what you're doing in the circular green blocks. So that's also kind of one way to bring foodscapes in the districts. But so this has also been one angle we've been addressing too. And actually, we started last year, first of all, to find the topics and themes in more detail with the different cities, and then we were supposed to run 3 pilots last spring and fall. But no, Corona was making some difficulties for us, and there was actually 2 pilots running last year, and one of them is right at the moment. Wasn't it so that the team is here right now, having the last pilot started in Vantaa for this year? So the topics have been different, all of them very much linked to the residential community and on the block level, bringing greenness and food to the neighborhood. Let me tell you a bit more about those. So first, here in Kalasatama, we had a company called Granlund that was really concentrating on engaging residents for urban planning, and they brought an app using AR to show the residents what the Loviseholm Park would look like in the future, and then the residents could also then reflect their wishes to the plan via the app. We will be talking a bit more about this later on, as I have Lauri online, who's been really running this specific pilot and experimenting together with the city and with the residents. We have some friends from Stavanger here, and we had one pilot in Stavanger running last fall, and this was the food case. So there were two companies, Revel and co-creators, that were actually then started to collaborate within this pilot. And the aim was really to make local healthy food more accessible and inclusive for the neighborhoods. And there are challenges that the pilot really focused to tackle. So local food is often highly priced, and there's a lack of awareness where you can get it and low accessibility. So they piloted a digital platform creating business for the local producers, and at the same time testing different kinds of best pickup points for the delivery for the citizens, like schoolyard or different options. Also other kinds of public spaces. And then the last one is somehow linked to urban farming in one way. So, and this is also a company from Copenhagen now piloting in Vantaa, as said, right now setting up the nests in VAV apartments in Vantaa. So they're really piloting a block level solution combining resident engagement, so the people will kind of be aware that they have bee nests within their neighborhood, and also kind of be more aware of the meaning of having pollinators in their yard. And it's also kind of a pilot really combining bee and biodiversity, and really creates a foundation for regenerative food cultivation in the city. So like said, so we had a test set up in Vantaa in 2021 just to see that the nest functions, and now together with the housing company this pilot will go on, so we will let you know. So follow also Forum Virium Helsinki channels to know what is ongoing within this pilot. But as I have Lauri Lemmenlehti online from City of Helsinki and Forum Virium Helsinki, so I think Lauri is the best person to reflect with me what's happening, what has been happening in Kalasatama. Lauri, are you there?
Hi Kaisa, yes, I'm here.
Great. So what do you think? Should we first take a look?
Yeah, I think like we have a really nice video produced about what we did, and I think it's a good way to start here.
Yeah, let's do that.
Cities are growing and green spaces are becoming more important to ensure the well-being of people and nature. In the Healthy Liveable Neighbourhoods piloting programme, agile pilots have been running in 3 Nordic district urban labs. Green Kalasatama mobile application was co-developed and tested together with local residents in the developing district of Kalasatama, Helsinki.
In this case, we work very closely with Forum Virium. Well, it's very important to have this kind of co-creation activities and having this testing, because we receive a lot of feedback from the users. So during this period, we were able to improve the application, add new features, and then I think we got a good result.
Green Kalasatama demonstrates an engaging and educative approach in participatory green area planning with the use of augmented reality.
For this pilot, it was very interesting for us to test the use of augmented reality on a city scale and develop an application that can be fun and educative for the residents to do the urban planning.
The mobile application allows users to place green elements, such as trees and bushes, in their surrounding area in a virtual environment.
Kivointa oli laittaa puita.
Mielenkiintoisinta oli ehdottomasti semmoinen osallistaminen, käyttäjien osallistaminen.
With augmented reality, new landscape designs can be better visualized before they are completed in real life. Inviting users to test the solution in the densely built neighborhood of Sompasaari offered valuable insights for the urban planners as well.
Meille kaavoittajille tämmöiset uudet digitaaliset työkalut on tosi monipuolisia ja käteviä työkaluja. Ne havainnollistaa asukkaille ja meille itsellemmekin sitä lopputulosta, mihinkä pyritään ja millaisia suunnitelmia on alueelle tulossa.
Yeah, great. What should I do now? Good. Now I see you again, Lauri. Great.
Great.
Great. So, what do you think? What were the main learnings from the pilot?
Well, I think there's a few things. One thing was like a bit surprising for me, like how well has the whole augmented reality software ecosystem, how much have they grown and how well they function already. I think a lot of people have experiences of AR like from 10 years ago when they were really clunky, but you know, time has passed and they're accessible and usable, like, and you don't need to always have the most newest device for them to work. One thing is kind of like developing this thing, and of course like understanding what do you need and what do you want the app to do. But a lot of these green infrastructure issues, what they actually need to function is a lot of this invisible database infrastructure, informational infrastructure done by the city that works in the background of all these usable softwares. So if you want to either let citizens collect you data and feed that into the city systems, or you would like to have to show citizens the data that the city has about the environment, you need to build up these like systems of moving that information. We're still in a position where we have to do a lot of things manually. And once we can automatize those data movement processes, then everything kind of like comes much easier.
Okay. So what about then, what do you think in the future? How can you apply the learnings of this pilot within urban planning?
Well, basically what we did here is we showed the citizens the park that's being constructed right now there. But of course, like once you plant a tree, it's gonna take decades and decades to actually grow up to be the adult plant life. You need to have patience to it. And I think what we haven't had before is these tools to visualize what is it going to be in the future. And at the same time, it's basically primering the citizens to think about the greenery, that it takes effort, it just like isn't there magically. In Kalasatama, there in the southern part where you just had an industrial harbor before, there wasn't really any natural value. So everything that kind of like is there now is kind of like brought there and it's being built.
Yeah.
And just kind of like opening these things to the citizen is very important. And now that they could, you know, plant like plant new trees and try new. So you got tools to see what there is, but also these kind of like gaming things where you can plant the trees where you want, and that data we can collect, and that data we can feed to the planners, and that they might have a sense of preferences, what citizens have. But for those things to work in the long run, we need a lot of this media database and IT infrastructure within the cities.
Yeah, but then what about collaboration with Granlund, the company behind this? Are you continuing on something, or?
Yeah, in the big project that we're doing, we're looking at green infrastructure and participation and digital tools. And we also have these agile piloting open calls that are finishing now in June. But they proposed a service, of course, kind of like learning from this project that kind of like really understand the problematism quite well. They provided another kind of solution where you use augmented reality to collect data about the environment for the city. And we're testing it right now. We have tested it a few times, and it's going to be available for try in Sopasaari now in the summer. So it's going very nicely. I think they had quite a lot of the insight. They get user feedback, and maybe I think like both parties, Forum Virium here and Granlund, is that when you do this kind of like participation of products, the level of software usability, polish, like that they need to function very, very well, because they have to, of course, kind of like help all the citizens in the city. So that came as a little bit of surprising, but I think like we got with a result that kind of like actually provides a lot of services for all kind of citizens.
Well, great to hear, and thanks for popping up today. I will also invite our colleague Magnus from Copenhagen Solutions Lab, who's also been, first of all, following the pilots, and actually Copenhagen was really following Green Kalastama pilot in special of these three. So what are your thoughts on this kind of engagement tools, Magnus?
Well, I think they're interesting. First of all, I think that these citizen engagement methods which were developed in the project are for sure something that we will see much more of in the future. I think it's great to see tools which have applications and potentials for different segments. So in this case, I think we have a planning potential so that the planners can use the tool to visualize stuff, and then we also have like a huge democratic potential in that it's involving the citizens in planning.
Yes. What about then? It was also the first time we tried agile piloting within the Nordic context. So what were your experiences from the program and the way of working?
I think only good experiences, more or less. I think Charlie had a good point earlier, stating like what incentive does a city have to share with other cities, and I think that's one of the things that we're trying to mitigate within the Nordic Smart City Network. So it's always a pleasure working in the network, and I think that taking the position as a follower city instead of a primary city in a pilot, there's actually also a lot to be gained from the follower position, which sort of came as a surprise to me. But the amount of influence we've had on informing the call and everything, securing the relevancy for the city of Copenhagen as well, has been brilliant.
Thanks. Do you think there's something you can bring up and take into usage in your own city as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think the key learnings from this pilot is, first of all, that you also gain a lot from just being a follower city. Then I think it's good learning or good knowledge to have, that you're actually able to develop working solutions within a relative short time span. But often that goes hand in hand with the private companies, because this is where the degree of innovation is the highest, in my opinion.
Thanks, Magnus. Thanks a lot for popping in today as well. And actually, we will move on forward in the program as we're running a bit late. We had such lively discussions during the earlier ones. But I actually had a couple of slides, but I had a couple of slides. I would have introduced the next speaker, but now, never mind, so I'll just say. So we are still continuing with this Nordic project to work within the Helsinki Innovation Districts. There was a third, there was also another pilot, Parkly, that we experimented here in Kalasatama last summer with a modular green solution. That was brought in, like Lauri said, in a rather grey old industrial district under being built, and it actually was brought for us in the same batch as the Nordic pilots, and we in Forum Virium Helsinki decided to do it here in Kalasatama, and later on in the summer also in Malmi. And this year, City of Helsinki is continuing in Malmi with a larger pilot, and us at Forum Virium Helsinki, we are there as it's one of the Helsinki Innovation Districts. And what we want to learn, as all of these pilots that we've been running, for example, within this Nordic program, have been very linked to the neighborhoods and places. So we really want to see how this kind of interventions can be, how we can measure this change, and how we can really kind of gain data on what is happening when we do this kind of interventions. And we actually have this summer partnered as a last thing we do within the Nordic Innovation Project. So we're partnered with Milton and Spin Unit. And I have actually asked here Damiano to tell us how to measure public space with cultural analytics. You're welcome, Damiano.
I'm going to share my screen. Okay, just a second, because I'm in a usual setting, so I'm at the moment traveling in Italy, so I'm using my iPad to show it.
Great,
and in case
it's working.
you don't hear me
Yeah.
clearly, just please let me know.
This is good, perfect.
Right, great. So yes, have a good day, everyone. Thanks for having me here, and I'm really happy to present a few points on how we generally think about urban values, and of course, what we're going to do together with Milton in Malmi. Well, I want to take a bit of a step back because the work that we do as Spin Unit is about finding and developing new urban values. So we need to understand first what are the most common processes for value creation in cities. But historically, we can say it's about three. So the primary, secondary, and tertiary way of producing values in cities, and the primary a mode of production is the extraction of values from nature. So it's basically creating economies around the resources that we have. Therefore, the reproduction of those values, of course, is much related to the commons. Secondary production, of course, is about the production and distribution of industrial goods. So this is something we have seen much more in the 60s and 70s coming up until almost the nowadays mode, which is development of intangible values through services. This is changing again, as usual in cities. The way we produce values is constantly in a changing phases from time to time, and especially now that we're living multiple crises, we are seeing a new shift in the production of values towards different ones. What is key to note, though, is that we often talk about the sort of the hyperlocal. When we talk about public space, we say, okay, the local space, it's not local anymore, it's hyperlocal. However, we like to see it more that the local has become the hyperlocal of the rest of the world. So when we look at a square like Malmi, Yle Malmi, or other squares in a city, so public spaces, I think it's much more useful for us to think it as they are an extension of the world rather than the other way around. So we need to start to think about a new way to find and produce values in cities. And this is through developing collaborative and inclusive approaches to discover those values, and of course find models to translate them into drivers of change. Clearly, the co-evolution of intangible assets, it's going to be focused on planetary well-being, because the relationship between people and nature, it's basically it's fundamental to our survival. I've been also studying a bit the relationship between biodiversity and well-being in the past 6 years in Tampere University, and we carried out multiple studies also in multiple regions, but especially across Finland, where we saw that especially in kids, the contact, so not just being near, but the contact with biodiversity can increasingly, let's say, dampen the incidence of non-communicable diseases. So we're talking about asthma, diabetes, and so on. So by bringing people in contact, physical contact with nature, we can avoid them, let's say, a long-term, serious, and also in some cases expensive health issues to carry on for their life. So what we focus on then is cultivating these urban commons so that, let's say, the wealth of cities is shared, and also favoring homegrown technologies, and especially allocating collective assets to catalyze new ideas. So we need to ensure that those kind of new values extracted and produced in cities are actually allocated in the right manner so that local ideas can emerge. And what has to do this with the Malmi is because this approach helps us to also evaluate cities. So we can basically find potentials, but we can also evaluate the impact of transformations, in this case in public space. We use a lot this cultural analytics for public space methodology, which is about looking at the space, the activities, and the values. So this means that we try to understand how the actual design affects the value creation, how the mixity and the blend of human activities enriches those values, and eventually we go and see what are the cultural elements that are most valued by people in this area. So these are sort of, this is kind of a generic framework that we've been working on for, about 10 years now. And we keep refining it. As we know, cities are not replicable, so not a model works for all of them. And that's the most exciting thing, is that in every city we work and in every square we go, we need to always understand the local context instead of blindly applying some kind of a framework, because it just never works, at least in our experience, because cities are different as much as their societies. So the indicators are going to always be produced locally, and that's why it's very important for us to be present in the real space. However, those values are also produced and reproduced online. So we are going to bring together the experience of the tangible public space with the digital, and this is very important for us. And I'm going to tell you more about it in the next couple of slides, but basically the space, it's a primal and fundamental kind of a framework for people to, let's say, interact, but also dwell and produce new values in cities. So we want to map the morphology of the site. We look at the relationship between people and the locations they choose, and overall about the shape of the city. So in our case, we're going to, for example, in Malmi, we're going to collect data about the spatial environment, and we're also going to see how this is reflected in the digital space. What it means that whenever we map cities, we look at streets and buildings as physical objects, but they all have a digital life where people leave traces, talk about those places, interact with those places. So we are going to basically go beyond the tangible form and explore the digital. When we talk about activities, we think so much about not the functions that are available in the city, but the activities that are available in the city. Because what we know from many years of experience, starting from Jane Jacobs to Jan Gehl and Christopher Alexander, so all the big names from 60s and 70s that revolutionized the methodology of kind of a mapping and understanding cities, we know very clearly that it's the blend of human activities that creates values and also increase the attractivity of the space and allows people to dwell for a longer period of time. So what we want to do is that we want to understand the diversity and the complexity of necessary and optional activities. So we want to basically understand if areas are offering both and if people are performing both. Because when they're mixed, the area is usually more lively throughout the day and throughout the week and throughout the seasons. And this is extremely relevant for a public space like Yle Malmi. However, we use a lot of social media data here because we know from our research as well and from other studies we've done in the past that it doesn't matter how much data we add if it doesn't matter to people. So quite often we utilize big data instead of thick data, which is rather more kind of relevant for small urban places, because with big data we can see general patterns, but with thick data, which means data collected through anthropological studies done on kind of on site and online, we can really understand the perceptible values of the space. There is kind of here on the left a small map showing you the city center of Helsinki. For instance, on the left, these are all sort of the establishments as they're mapped by kind of the official kind of a GIS map of the city. And on the other circle, you can see actually how the same activities are present in Foursquare, which is, for example, it's a social media platform that collects data about amenities in the cities. So it's much more augmented. There is so much more when we look into the data which is produced by people rather than, let's say, by official data sets that are quite often designed for law kind of purposes, so to understand the true location of a business rather than what the door is. So there are these kind of things that are very interesting for us. So eventually we end up looking at what is valued by let's say the dwellers of the space, and also here we are trying again to go into the hybrid space, which means, well, we do observation on site, understanding the dwell time, understanding how people will interact with these new transformations. However, we're also going to see on platforms like Instagram and Twitter, we're going to look what is the visual representation of the space before and after. And this is very interesting because if something is shared online, it means it's worth sharing. So if the new intervention is going to be present on the digital world, it means that it's going to be it's kind of worth for, let's say, the local population to share it there. So we're going to be interested to look into that. This is, of course, is way more complex than we have presented it now, but adding 10 minutes, that's all I could do. But for sure, if you're in touch with Forum Virium, you will kind of see the results of this study that we're going to kind of carry out throughout the summer together with Milton. And so we'll be working with, I think, Elina Reponen is on their side from Milton. And together we're going to create a model to evaluate public space intervention in Yle Malmi. So this is pretty much what we have in mind, and the general model we're going to, let's say, localize for the square. And this is all from my side. And since I'm not there, it's a bit difficult to maybe have a kind of a true conversation and debate. So since I'm away still for a couple of weeks, but anyway, if you want, we can have a chat on Twitter, or you can ask questions now. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Damiano. This was good. And since I was not able to share a picture before, so I hope I can also share a picture from Malmi now. So this is what was happening last summer and this summer. So the setting is actually now larger and ready, and actually it will be launched this weekend on Helsinki Day, the 12th June. So I think there we hope to see some representations also in social media, like Damiano was talking. So this is partly the company who's behind this concept, and like said, we've had it in both Kalasatama, in Malmi last summer, and now again from the city of Helsinki part. So it's supporting the planning of the renovation of Malmi Marketplace as part of the urban regeneration plan, and then the renovation part comes later on. Now we're also looking what the intervention can do, and we're super excited to hear what Spin Unit and Milton can do, and how we can also use this kind of model then later on, maybe in other pilots and interventions in the future. This is actually, we've been having very lively discussions. Is there any question for Damiano online or here from the audience, or is it just ending? Damiano, I really thank you for coming to join us today, and I'm sure we will continue the discussions, and we will also kind of probably be talking more about this in our next sessions in the fall, when we have also the results from Malmi, and we're really much looking into also collaborating with the city within this pilot. So it's great to see that some pilots and experiments are also scaling. But with these words, I want to thank you all, and hope to see you again live and online, and have a good weekend, and do go to Malmi if you have time on Sunday. Thank you.